As we know, the QDX, quantity demanded for product X, and PX is the price of commodity X. Y is equal to level of income, and P1 to Pn minus 1 is the price of all the products, and T is equal to taste of the consumer. A is equal to advertisement. EY represent expected future income, and EP represent expected future price. U equals represents other determinants not uh, uh, convert in uh, the list of determinants. That means item. So as we know, individual demand function, same as a market demand function, it shows how demand of market is affected by the different factors. Uh, for example, QDX equals function of Px, comma Py, and P1 up to Pn minus 1, comma T, A, Ey, Ep, P, D, U, P. So these symbols, already we know these symbols. P means population, D equals distribution of consumers. Now let us discuss the determinants of market demand function in briefly. Size of population means the more the population, the more will be the market demand, and vice versa. That's why it is a determinants for market demand function. Second one is distribution of income. If in a country the income disparity is less, then market demand will be more, and vice versa. Next, composition of population. If the population of a country has greater percentage of youth, then market demand for branded clothes, accessories, bikes, etc. would be more. Yes. On the other hand, if old age people from a larger part of population, then market demand for health facilities, walking sticks, etc. would be high. And last uh, one is climatic and weather conditions. During winter season, the demand for woolen cloths rises. Similarly, during the rainy season, demand for umbrellas and raincoats are all time high. So these are all the demand functions of demand, or determinants of demand. As we know, there are two types in demand schedule. One is individual demand schedule, second one is market demand schedule. The table shows demand at different prices of the goods. Different prices of the goods. First column represents the price of the commodity. Next, A, B, C, D, the individual customers columns shows quantity demanded, and the last table means market demanded. This last table shows or represents market demand. It is a summation of individual customers quantity demanded. The individual demanded schedule shows the different quantities of a good that a consumer can buy at different possible prices. Keeping in mind the factors affecting individual demand means price of the commodity, price of the related goods, income of the consumer, taste and preference of the consumer, future expectations regarding availability of the goods. Next, market demand schedule shows the different quantities of a commodity that all the consumers in the market intend to buy the different possible prices. Different possible prices. Here, keeping in mind the factors affecting market demand like size of the population, distribution of income, climatic and weather conditions, composition of population, all those things. Here, y-axis represents price of the commodity and x-axis represents quantity of the commodity. DD curve represents demand curve. DD is an individual demand curve having a negative slope because of inverse relationship between price and quantity demanded. If we consider this graph as a market demand curve, it is the graphical representation. Market demand curve also has a negative slope. It is the horizontal summation of individual demand curve. DA and DA is an individual demand curve of A, DB. DB is a individual demand curve of B as well as C and D. Remember that individual demand curve is a steeper and market demand curve is a flatter. This is very helpful to competitive exams. That's why we have to remember that individual demand curve is a steeper and market demand curve is a flatter. So we have to know causes of downward sloping of demand curve. Why the demand curve downward sloping? According to the law of demand, there exists an opposite relationship between the price and the quantity demanded. And that is why demand curve is downward sloping. And second one is the assumption. Because of the assumption, the demand curve is negative. The linear form of demand curve assumption is causes to demand curve is negative. The various reasons for this downward sloping of demand curve are as follows, like law of diminishing marginal utility and equimarginal utility, price effect, income effect, substitution effect, different uses. So these are all the causes of downward sloping of demand curve.